I think that there's this fallacy that business decision making is not driven by emotion, right? You look at business and people are like, oh no, we just need to give them the details, right? We just need to share with them what it's going to do for their business. All decision making is emotional, right? Like people are still people. And so when you think about authenticity, it's really about connecting with people on an emotional level, but in a way that doesn't feel forced.
Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Today, we're excited to have Candace Barker from Initiative, a key player in B2B marketing, join us.
95% of your buyers are not in the mindset of making a purchase, right? So if you're only focused on flow for 5% of your audience, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, right? So what we're trying to say is, you have to spend time, effort, energy on the fame piece as well, so that by the time people get to making a buying decision, they know who you are. They're familiar with your suite of products.
We'll discuss Initiative's innovative fame and flow strategy, their creative and data-driven approach to setting industry standards, and Candace's insights on current marketing trends.
The number one challenge that clients said they face was, how do we showcase the impact of the media on our objectives, right? And it's difficult because within the B2B landscape, it's not typical that someone just goes online and makes the purchase, right? With longer buying cycles, it can take 2 years to make a B2B decision. Coupled with the fact that the buying committee is extensive, the cycle is long. Much of that cycle you can't even track.
We'll also discuss the growing impact of generative AI and navigating the marketing world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more insightful discussions with industry leaders. Let's get started. Candace, a very warm welcome again to the DesignRush podcast. We are so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited also.
Of course. Okay, so let's jump right in, okay? I'd like to learn a little bit more about Initiative before we get into, more of the nitty-gritty stuff. So first of all, we know that one of the core pillars of Initiative's philosophy is imagination. Now, Candace, can you tell me, what does imagination mean to you in the context of B2B marketing?
Yeah, for sure. So it's really interesting that you asked that question, because I feel like a lot of our clients are even asking a very similar question. Historically, in the B2B landscape, imagination was not something people talked about, right? Like, it was very traditional media channels. You're looking at things like content syndication and white papers. And it's not to say that there's not a place for all of those things. There certainly is. But the people that we're trying to reach within the B2B community have evolved so much, and we have to be able to evolve with them. So for instance, the buying committee has increased substantially to 4 times the size that it was 10 years ago. They're aging down. It's now dominated by millennials and people that look like us, right? So there's a ton more diversity. And with that, the expectations are changing, right? They want to be spoken to in a manner that feels more consumer-like. They want to be engaged. They want to feel like we understand they are a whole person. And so we have to do the work to be more exciting. That requires imagination. It requires innovation. It requires challenging ourselves and our media partners to show up differently. So that really has been kind of the crux of how we're looking at imagination for the partners that we work with at Initiative.
Okay. And can you then detail, the specific inspiration behind Initiative's B2B marketing campaigns?
Yeah. So, it really varies, right? We have a ton of different clients within the B2B landscape, and each of them has a different audience that they're trying to reach. So it looks different, right? For Salesforce, who may be going after more of an enterprise audience, versus Intuit or QuickBooks, where they're really trying to target small business owners. The inspiration and what we're looking at can be very, very different. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and we try to dive deep into the mindset of each of those audiences to really bring that imagination and innovation to life for them.
Love that. Okay, so can you share an instance just on the topic of that, where Initiative's creativity really impacted a client's business in like a really short time?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked this question because this is something that we are super excited about. We actually recently won an award for this, and it was the
Oh,
Salesforce program called The Shift. So we partnered with CNBC. And it's interesting because for this one, we were still leveraging those traditional channels, right? We're still showing up in linear TV, but the way that we did it was very innovative. We were able to tell stories of customers and how they, really leverage digital transformation despite all of the market headwinds to transform their business. And so we showcased that across CNBC on linear. We were able to evangelize that across different channels, across Salesforce Plus, across the CNBC digital platform, and the response to that was just awesome. And what it really came down to was just really, I think, honing in on the emotion behind these businesses and telling stories in a way that felt authentic and imaginative for our consumers. And I mean, as I mentioned, the response was just insane. So not only did we win a gold award for the 2023 Festival of Media, but the business impact was also really substantial. So, and I wrote this down, but we doubled the subscribers for Salesforce Plus, and then we generated a 20% awareness for the platform. So, in just such a short time of getting that up and running, I mean, it just completely transformed the Salesforce Plus business, which was obviously what the clients were looking for. And I think speaks to why you really have to show up differently for these audiences.
exactly. I mean, look, first of all, congratulations. That's incredible. Really, it's wonderful that you guys were able to achieve all of that. Um, you did mention brand authenticity and being really authentic. And I actually wonder, Candace, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think that there's this fallacy that business decision making is not driven by emotion, right? So, you look at a Nike, at an Under Armour, any consumer brand, and people will say you have to connect with people emotionally. You look at business, and people are like, oh no, we just need to give them the details, right? We just need to share with them what it's going to do for their business. All decision making is emotional, right? Like people are still people. And so when you think about authenticity, it's really about connecting with people on an emotional level, but in a way that doesn't feel forced, right? It's understanding the psychology behind the decisions that they're making. I'll give you an example of this. I mentioned earlier that the buying committee is aging down and diversifying, right? So now it means there are a lot more people of color that are on decision making committees, okay? The way that people make decisions when they are the only person that looks like them in the room is very different than someone who may have just historically been accustomed to this type of environment, right? So we have to really understand the psychology behind it and then connect with that, right? But if you don't do that work in advance and you try to target this audience of, let's say, African American decision makers, but you haven't done the work to truly understand the psychology, it's not going to feel authentic. It's not going to make sense. It's going to fall flat. So when I say, you have to really be authentic, it's doing the work to understand who you're talking to and the psychology behind how they show up, how they make decisions, and all of that, because it certainly impacts the campaigns that you'll be pulling together.
I think that at the end of the day, if we don't have diversity,
Mm-hmm.
how are we possibly going to reach everybody that we want to reach? Okay, so just shifting a little bit now as well. Initiative's promo video also mentions that, media has had a big role in the division of groups. Can you elaborate on what Initiative meant by this?
Yeah, so I think, and when we say media, right, we're not just talking about paid media, it's just media in
Sure.
general. As people gain more access to information, it's easier to create divisiveness. We believe, though, at Initiative that the role of media should really be to unify, right? And so that's really the crux of our business proposition is that we work with our clients to be a unifying voice to essentially help us look past the divisiveness that can happen if we're not responsible with the way that we're communicating with people.
I have to agree with you there. I think we kind of lost our way a little bit with regards to media being super divisive on people and groups, and it feels like we're all over the place. So I find it really interesting that as a agency, you guys really try to tackle that, or you are tackling that rather, which is incredible. So. Um, just to take that a little bit further, what specific aspects of media's divisive nature is initiative really aiming to transform in B2B relations?
Yeah, so I think as I mentioned earlier, we were focused on unifying. And even going back again, I work specifically with B2B clients. So you think about the buying committee, right? It could be very easy to focus on just one kind of demographic within that buying committee. And that's not the way that we look at it, right? Like we are truly trying to dive deeper to understand. It's through the understanding that you can unify. It's finding a common ground. It's finding a unifying or universal truth across our audiences that allows us to have that unifying power. And that's truly what we're focused on. So I think a lot of companies can do that poorly when they're trying to talk to everyone as if they're the same. That's not what we're doing, right? We're honoring differences. We're understanding differences. We're understanding the psychology behind how different audiences think, but we're also doing the work to find that universal truth that can unify everyone.
Okay, so can you then, Candace, just detail, initiative strategy, with regards to the divisiveness specifically in B2B relations? I mean, there. Okay, I know you've said that you guys are working to unify and everything, but have you got like a strategy in place of where you'll start and where you're hoping to end up? Or is that on a case by case basis?
It's truly on a case by case basis, right? Because all of the audiences are so vastly different. We'll have a client like Salesforce where they're trying to target an enterprise buyer. So the buying committee looks very different than someone for QuickBooks, where they may be trying to target a small business owner who only works with themselves, right? In that case, there's a different understanding that we have to have, especially as it pertains to people of color, right? Because that's also a space that's diversifying, and there are different challenges that they face than someone who may be a white business owner, right? There are tons of challenges that they face that are different. So the first thing that we've honestly that we have been focusing on is understanding who those audiences are, right? That's the work that we're doing right now across all of our clients, is diving deeper into who the audiences are, understanding how they think, where are the differences, and where are the unifying factors that we can really tap into. That's the work that's happening right now. So it's on a case by case basis. And I don't have a great example just yet, because this is truly like a huge project and undertaking that we're working on right now.
Let's move on to initiative's fame and flow approach. Could you please tell us what does that entail?
So I'm so excited about this for so many reasons. And I truly think that it is changing the game in the way that we think about B2B. So Fame and Flow is not just a B2B proposition, but it is 100% applicable. And we've been doing the work to adapt it and evolve it so that it is specific to B2B. And we're actually going to be releasing that in a few weeks, which I'm super excited about. But the crux behind it is fame is essentially awareness, familiarity, all of those traditional kind of upper funnel things that you think about when you bring a marketing program into the marketplace, okay? Flow is, how do we deliver on a client's business objectives, right? So we're talking like, are they trying to increase sales? Are they trying to drive qualified leads? Within the B2B space, we've historically over pivoted to the flow side of things, right? Where we're spending all of our dollars there. We talked a little bit earlier about the ability to connect emotionally and tell a brand story, and that's really the fame piece. And what we're trying to say with this proposition is neither is more important than the other, okay? You can't have flow if you don't have fame. Within the B2B marketplace, at any given time, and everybody has probably kind of heard this 95/5 rule, at any given time, 95% of your buyers are not in the mindset of making a purchase, right? They're not even in market for what you're trying to sell. So if you're only focused on flow for 5% of your audience, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, right? So what we're trying to say is, you have to spend time, effort, energy on the fame piece as well, so that by the time people get to making a buying decision, they know who you are. They're familiar with your suite of products. They have an understanding of how you can deliver on what they're trying to achieve, and that's very different for B2B. Right? That's just not been the way that we've looked at things historically. So I'm super excited to be rolling this out across our clients.
So, with the fame and flow approach, I know that, there is definitely something to that. And the one thing that came to my mind now, although this isn't fully B2B, obviously this is B2C for sure, but Stanley Cups come to mind, whereas like their strategy for how they just completely took over, because I think a woman's car was set on fire, but the Stanley Cup survived, and then they sent her a new car, and it was like such a great strategy. So, I mean, I know that you guys are still working on this, but hypothetically speaking, if you could give like an idea of like if you had to apply that to a business, for business to business, how would you be able to apply something like that there?
So I think, and what's really cool about it is it also means that we have to collaborate very closely with our clients, creative teams, and media partners, right? So we can no longer live in this siloed ecosystem where the client just sends us a creative video or sends us assets and says like, get it live, right? We can't, and we send it to a partner. We can't do that anymore. It requires collaboration up front. It requires us having a deep understanding of what they're trying to achieve and their brand ethos, for us to be able to come together collectively, media partner, client, creative, and say, this is how we want to show up, right? It's completely different than the way things have been done historically in the B2B landscape. So even thinking about Salesforce with, the shift, when you think about that, that required having conversations up front about, hey, we're going to be on linear TV, but how are we going to show up there, right? What are the stories that we want to tell? How can we make this feel authentic? How can we ensure that the assets that we create can live on linear, but also be adapted for, Peacock, and be adapted to live in other digital channels? It requires having all of those conversations, right? The goal was still flow, which is we need to get subscribers, but we have to have that fame piece and let that be a big part of the campaign strategy in order to get the flow that we desire. So that was an instance of it really kind of coming to life, where no aspect of the fame and flow initiative was more important than the other. All of it mattered.
Okay. So then in a case like that, what would be the elements or the role of media planning, or the specific things within a strategy for this media planning to really enhance the fame to get to the end goal of the flow as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, the first piece is like, we start with collaboration up front. It's getting on the phone with the clients, getting on the phone with the creative team, with our potential media partners, to talk about how we want to show up, brainstorm ideas that feel authentic and natural. And then our teams are doing the work to understand who we're trying to target, right? There's a reason why we were on CNBC and not another partner. And that is also one of the reasons why it was so successful. So we're able to do the work through data analytics, a deep understanding of our customers, to know where they are. Where are they most likely to engage in a deep and meaningful way? Who's going to be the best partner for that? And in this case, it was CNBC, and it worked out perfectly. But that's the work that we're doing on a case-by-case basis. We're truly trying to dive into the data to understand what are the best touch points for us to connect with our customer.
Okay, so as you've also mentioned a few times now, which is something that I definitely wanted to talk about as well, is that Initiative has teamed up with some massive businesses over the years. So can you tell us a little bit more about your work with businesses like Salesforce and AWS and how these came into fruition?
We have very long standing relationships with these partners, and there's a reason for that, right? It's because we understand the nature of their business, and we are constantly evolving and adapting to their needs, right? But then also challenging them in meaningful and collaborative ways, right? And then doing that with our media partners too. There have been so many instances of us being able to bring forth innovation, bring forth new ideas, things that did not even exist in the marketplace, but we were able to go back with our partners, collaborate to bring new things, new innovations to our clients. And that is truly because of the powerhouse of initiative and what we stand for, and our ability to just be fantastic partners with our media teams and the clients.
Now, Candace, just I know that you've only been there for 6 months, but in your view, what unique value do these partnerships, really bring to your B2B marketing strategies?
Yeah, so I think the word partner is key, right? When you use the term client, it's yes, we're providing a service, but it also feels very transactional, and that's not the way that we like to think of things. We are truly business partners. We want them to come to us with their biggest, meatiest business challenges, and we help them solve them. And sometimes, like, helping to solve that problem means bringing in another area of expertise that we do not have, right? That's also a part of being a really good, strong partner. We're hosting innovation summits for our clients. We recently did that with QuickBooks, where we were at their headquarters and we invited different media partners to come and just share their ideas. We recorded a live podcast with iHeartRadio in the room. There's just so much wonderful, wonderful work that's happening in partnership, in true partnership and collaboration with our clients.
Amazing. I mean, those are the kind of rooms that you want to be in, right? That's incredible. Okay, so just moving on a little bit now. How does Initiative, specifically measure the success of its B2B campaigns?
Yeah, great question. So it's funny you asked that. I recently did a survey of our B2B practice because I wanted to understand what our teams felt like were the biggest challenges that their clients are facing, obviously from their conversations with their clients. And the number one challenge that clients said they face was, how do we showcase the impact of the media on our objectives, right? And it's difficult because within the B2B landscape, it's not typical that someone just goes online and makes the purchase, right? You have longer buying cycles. It can take 2 years to make a B2B decision. Coupled with the fact that the buying committee is extensive, the cycle is long. Much of that cycle you can't even track. Like, it's difficult to know where people are at any point of the stage. After you are driving a lead, it's also difficult to know how they're moving through the pipeline. Unfortunately, I won't even say that we're in a space where, as an industry, we have that solved. We don't. It's still a challenge. There are proxies for this. There are things that we're doing internally in collaboration with our clients to get a better understanding of it. But that's going to be, I think, a big challenge, not only for us, but also for our media partners to help us solve that huge industry challenge. There's no one solution for it right now.
Okay, so then how does Initiative currently integrate data analytics into, its decision-making processes for B2B marketing specifically?
As we're planning, there's a ton of work that we do with data and analytics to understand it. So we have proprietary tools. One is called OESP. So we have like this fusion tool that allows us to look at audiences. We have like a custom survey that we do across B2B buyers and decision makers to understand their media habits, their interest, all of that. We use a ton of that data for planning. We also ingest a lot of client data. So through their like MMM, things like that, we have like partnerships with different media partners to ingest custom reach curves and things like that. So really diving deep into the data to understand. We also have been infusing audience strategy into all of our planning now. So we have an entire team dedicated to developing audiences using different data sets and helping us to define addressable audiences for our clients. So there's quite a lot of data that we're using to make the decisions. The challenge is that's all at the upfront. At the end of the campaign, or like as we're optimizing, we also need to look at data to understand what's working and what's not, right? But it's challenging to understand what are the proxy data points that you can look at to understand performance, knowing that you're not going to be able to get true performance until 2 years. It might be 2 years before you understand whether or not that target that you reached actually signed up for, a Salesforce suite of products, right? So we have to have proxies. We may look at things like, did we generate a qualified lead? But at the end of the day, that wasn't an answer to the business goal, right? If the business goal was we need people to sign up, we need people to purchase, we still need to do a lot of work in the industry to get to that point where we understand that in the short term, and we're just not there yet.
I do want to ask though, do you have a suggestion for a solution for that, or is it just like a wait and see type thing?
Yeah, so I have ideas. We're currently collaborating with some media partners who are very strong in the B2B space to potentially build a tool that will allow us to understand that, okay? That it's going to take time. It's not like we'll have it tomorrow type of thing, but we are as an agency trying to solve our clients' challenges. And it's not something that we can do alone. Like I said, we're collaborating with some of the biggest B2B partners in the space because we all know it's an issue and no one has solved it. But we have the right minds on top of it, So I'm really excited for it.
Okay, so then just with the data that you do look at, Candace, what are the particular metrics that you really, really observe or that stand out to you the most that, I know it takes 2 years, but I want to know what metrics do you look at that lets you know maybe it's time to pivot or maybe it's time to really hone in on this?
Yeah. So, and those metrics, again, they're different by client, but I can tell you like how we look at it from a fame and flow perspective, right? So for fame, we're looking at like, are we increasing awareness? Do people now know who we are? Are they familiar with our products and what we do, right? You have to have an understanding of what the business is in order to consider it. So those are metrics that we look at, and we will, work with third parties to have an understanding of that, third-party research companies. From a flow perspective, we're typically looking at things like, are people visiting our site, right? Like, are we driving the website traffic that we need? Are we generating quality, unduplicated leads, right? So people that are within the ICP, are we actually generating the leads that we want? But again, those are kind of proxies for the ultimate, flow, which is, are we driving the client's business? But those are some of the things that we would look at, right? Like website traffic, conversions, lead generation, people, setting up demos or reaching out to request a consultation with a salesperson. Those are all things that we would look at as well.
So Candace, just also on the other side of the coin, which KPIs do you find the most indicative of success in B2B marketing campaigns?
See, it's really tough because it depends on where a client is on the spectrum of fame and flow, right? So you may have some clients where their awareness levels are so low that there's just no way you can focus on flow. There's no way you can focus on conversion or driving leads because nobody really knows who you are. When that happens, we try to guide them towards, we really got to focus on awareness or driving familiarity. And then there are other clients who may have 95% awareness, right? 70% familiarity. And at that point, it's like, okay, there's not much work we need to do there. The problem is we need to generate leads. We need to, really be focused on driving the business. And so these are the KPIs that we're going to look at. So it really depends on where the brand is, where they're existing in this, vast spectrum of fame and flow.
So then what marketing or emerging marketing trends do you believe that businesses should really be prepared for in the next year?
So this focus on measurement 100% is going to be a big one. I would say not necessarily for the clients, because we all know this is their challenge, but the pressure is going to be on us as the agencies and on our media partners to better deliver in measurement, right? To better communicate how are we showcasing that this campaign was successful, right? That's the pressure I think that we're going to be feeling, especially with the economy the way that it is. We are definitely going to be feeling those pressures, and we need to be able to address them head on. And so we're not there yet, as I mentioned earlier, but like we need to start instilling confidence in our clients that we are working on it and we're getting there and we're truly pushing things forward. The other thing is innovation. We can't show up the way that we've shown up before. We just can't. The customer is changing, the buying committee, the dynamic is changing. We can't show up in the same manner that we did before. We cannot be boring. We have to be interesting. We have to be exciting. And we really have to push our media partners to bring forth innovation. Just recently, with one of our clients, we actually were able to work with a media partner to bring forth an innovation that didn't exist. I think I mentioned this earlier. Those are the types of things that we need to be doing more frequently, right? We cannot just do spots and dots campaigns anymore. Like you truly have to be interesting to break through. And I think that people are going to be feeling a lot more pressure to do that as well. I mentioned earlier, we just had our fiscal year 25 kind of strategic planning sessions with Salesforce. And one of the things that we recommended for them was putting aside a specific budget for innovation, right? Like it can't be on the sideline anymore. It can't be an afterthought. These are things that we have to think about from the beginning of a campaign. And we have to make sure that we have adequate budgets behind it. So that's something that we're trying to do, across our different clients. But I think a lot of people are going to be feeling those pressures too.
Mm-hmm. So in that context then, what does innovation mean for the B2B marketing sector?
Yeah.
Like what are the things that you're looking at?
Yeah. So it can be innovation in, how we show up, right? It could be innovation in the creative. Which could mean things like showcasing more emotion, focusing less on the transactional aspect of the business, but really focusing on like the emotion behind the problems that we're trying to solve. It could be looking at, partners that were traditionally consumer focused, right? What does it mean for a B2B brand to show up on TikTok? How do we do that in a way that feels authentic, right? It could also be working with existing partners, but looking at different ad formats or, looking at different contextual placements that we have not explored before. So there's really, I would say, a variance in spectrum for innovation. The way we try to look at it is kind of this 70-20-10, right? So innovation, 70% of the dollars that we spend should be focused on things that we know that work for our client. 20% should be focused on, hey, within these partners that we know really work for us, what are different things we can do? How can we tap into beta programs? How can we tap into new ad formats, new ways to measure our media? And then we like to allocate 10% of our budgets to what's just never been done. What have we never done before? Who are new partners? What are ways that we are most certainly going to fail, but we have to push ourselves to try it out to see what works, right? We like to dedicate 10% of budgets towards that. If you truly want to be impactful, you have to be willing to fail. And that means testing out things we've never done before.
I love that. If you truly want to be impactful, you need to be willing to fail.
Mhm.
I am definitely going to repost that somewhere for sure. That's wonderful. Let me go to the topic of AI. I know that AI is taking over everything and has been in the last year, and everybody kind of just jumped on top of that, which comes with its own set of issues, of course. But I'm wondering, has Initiative incorporated AI or is planning to incorporate AI for, things like personalization and automation in the B2B marketing strategies? And, if so, how?
Yeah, it's so funny you asked this because like my perspective on it is probably a little different. I think that like AI has kind of been this buzzword, right? And everyone's panicking like, what do we do with AI? What do we do? AI is just one of the many tools that you can use to achieve your business goals. And it doesn't always make sense for everyone. It just doesn't, right? Um, how might we use it? It could mean a client comes to us and says they want to focus on lead generation. We're going to do content syndication. We might leverage AI to personalize the content that we're going to share out, right? It might allow us to be more efficient, but AI is not the objective and it's not the outcome. It's just a tool. And I think more people probably should think of it as a tool versus the destination. But I hear a lot of people, this comes up all the time, and folks are, what are we going to do with AI? Or we've got to capitalize on AI, but they have no idea if it makes sense for their business objectives, right? So we just think of it as one of the many tools that we have at our disposal to help our clients be more efficient and be more impactful.
Mm-hmm. DesignRush just covered a survey by Gartner that said that I think it was something like 87% of marketers fear that AI might take their jobs. Um, so, I mean, you're obviously not one of those people. If you had to say, like, in a few words to people to just be like, hey, it's going to be okay. This is how it's going to work. Can you do that?
Listen, the heart of what we do as marketers, as advertisers, as media practitioners is driving connection. AI can't drive connection. It can help you do that better, faster, more efficient, but you need the human touch. So, am I concerned? Absolutely not, because that is what we do. We are the human touch. Um, I mean, there have been so many times, like even I might see an ad and I'm like, oh, AI wrote that because it really doesn't make sense, right? Like it just doesn't, it's missing the human context, right? And so we can't overly pivot towards that where we lose what makes us human and we eliminate the connection that we're trying to drive. Media is not impactful if we're not driving connection. And a computer can't, it just can't drive connection. Have you ever seen a picture, an AI generated photo, and like it looks very real, but when you look at the eyes, you're like, oh, that's not real. You can just tell, right? And that part is the connection piece, is being able to look at someone and have a connection, to see past, just what their face may be showing. That's the human connection. That's the piece that we need. And only another human can do that from my perspective, right? I mentioned earlier, like my perspective is probably very different than a lot of media practitioners, or marketers, but I truly believe that, like, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is drive a connection, and we need each other to do that.
I think that, you can definitely tell that there's no soul. I think that's the biggest thing is like people want to have like soul connections with everything that they're doing and interacting with, right? It kind of feels too cold and weird, sort of that like uncanny valley, if you can put it that way. If you're reading or interacting with any type of content, it kind of puts you off for sure. So I agree, it does definitely need that human element to it. So just you did mention something about TikTok earlier, and I was going to ask you, could you detail how Initiative plans to leverage, short form video content, especially for like B2B audience management?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, not even just across TikTok, in general, people want short and quick, right? Nobody has time to watch a minute long video. I mean, there's some instances where that makes sense, but in general, we try to steer our clients toward more short form. It's difficult for B2B though, right? Because I think typically people are like, I have so much to say. Like, I need to explain what my business is and like the technical specs of like the tool that I'm providing them. And that's not the space for video. It just truly is not, right? So we definitely try to shift our clients towards having that short form and working collaboratively to ensure that the message is driving a connection. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and it's much harder for a B2B brand to do that than it is for a consumer brand, right? Apple can have a 5-second video and it's like, oh, I know that's Apple. A little more challenging with Salesforce or Cigna, right? And insurance companies. So it's definitely a challenge, but we're trying to shift them into that realm. We're also trying to better understand how B2B brands should show up and can show up in traditionally consumer focused channels and in traditionally consumer focused moments, cultural moments. So I'm actually hosting in 2 weeks our Fame and Flow for B2B forum in New York. And, we're going to have the entire B2B practice across initiative present for that. But we're inviting different media partners to come in and really help us understand some of these big, meaty challenges that we're trying to face. And TikTok is actually going to be presenting on just that topic. How can B2B brands win during these consumer focused moments? So I'm excited to learn about it and hear about it. And just, figure out how we can help our clients kind of lean in more in that space, knowing how the buying committee has shifted and evolved.
But in saying that, like how a B2B business can really fit in, doesn't that just come back down to like brand personality?
Yes, but we can understand how that can be challenging for some of these big, behemoths of B2B brands, right? How do we help Salesforce show up in that type of space, share their brand voice in a funny way, right? Or in a way that feels relatable? It can be very challenging. And so it requires all of us, just thinking differently, throwing everything we have known about the way that B2B marketers should go to market, just throw it out the window. And we're trying to just address the way things are now because they're different and they're constantly evolving.
I just wanted to also mention this. DesignRush had a podcast episode with David Malpass from Apollo a few months back, actually. And he mentioned that he integrated both performance-based marketing and brand-centric strategies to create like really impactful results within his B2B strategies. Now, I'm wondering, what is your take on this type of strategy?
No, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So that is essentially what Fame and Flow is, right? It's like, hey, we need the brand focused fame and we need the flow. You have to have both. They work so closely together, and there's so much data that shows that, you can't think about them in a silo because awareness driving media does have a huge impact on the bottom line, right? But you have to show up in those lower funnel, and I have to say funnel because we know it's not a funnel, but you have to show up in those spaces as well to be present when they're ready to make a decision. So all of it matters, and that truly is, I would say, the crux of how we're thinking about it as well.
Okay, now given initiative successful collaborations with B2B marketing and how you see B2B marketplaces like DesignRush may be playing a role in connecting brands with marketing agencies. How or what do you see as the biggest benefits to this of someone that's never worked with a B2B agency or a B2B marketing agency before and possibly going and checking on like one of these marketplaces for some of the top rated agencies and stuff? What are the biggest benefits to outsourcing an agency?
Yeah, so I would say I love that you asked that question because the benefit of leveraging a marketplace like DesignRush, it's not even just about us, right? The benefit to initiative. I think there was a time where brands felt like you had to be making $1 billion to be able to hire an advertising agency, right? There was a lack of access. What DesignRush does is eliminates that. It basically says like, hey, you can have access to these either large, agencies like an initiative or a small independent agency, regardless of what you're trying to achieve and like where you are in kind of the cycle of growing your business. There are agencies that are here to help you, right? There's an expertise that you can tap into. The same way you would not go to a dentist to get your hair done, right? Like, no, you go to the expert. You want to get your hair colored, you're going to go to an expert to get that done. You got to have that same type of care about your business. And so I love so much that DesignRush is giving this level of access to some of these smaller or, growing companies that need the help, but historically either didn't have access to it, didn't know that they could reach out, and now they do. So it's really exciting. And of course, as they grow and get bigger, hopefully we are able to step in and help as well. But I just love that it's giving these companies access.
So I know that we all have mentors and people that we really look up to in our lives or respect in our industries, and I'm wondering who that person or persons are for you.
Man, that's a tough question. That's so. I'll tell you, I have two.
Okay.
So there's one woman, her name is Ronnie Dickerson Stewart, and she actually interviewed me for my first internship at Draft FCB. I ended up getting the internship and I started my career in advertising with her. But she has remained in my corner since that day, right? She has been a voice in the room when I wasn't in the room, which is huge to have that, a sounding board. And she actually has her own executive coaching business now, which is really awesome. And so it's just been great to kind of have her share this journey of my career. The other person is actually my daughter. Okay. So she is 2.5. And, that girl just inspires the heck out of me because the way she's able to wake up every day with a truly fresh perspective. It doesn't matter what happened the day before. She wakes up every day with just a new sense of joy. And I think that that's something that we all need, right? Like, it's so easy to bring yesterday's challenges into today. And I try really hard not to do that, right? Yesterday's solutions probably can't help me today. So I try to wake up every day with that fresh perspective and, just try to bring that perspective to my clients too. What can we do differently today? How can we have a fresh perspective today? Let's not necessarily forget where we've come from, but how can we make it better, So yeah, she's 2.5 and has no idea that she inspires me in this way, but that's definitely another person that I love having in my corner.
Well, that is absolutely beautiful. I really love that answer. So, finally, Candace, if you could go back in time and give yourself advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
It would be, you belong in every room you're in. So I think that even now, I still struggle with, a little bit of imposter syndrome. Neither of my parents even went to college, right? So I didn't necessarily grow up seeing people that looked like me in the position that I am in. And so along my journey, there were many places where I was in a room that was new and different, and I may have been the only person that looked like me. Even going to business school, I went to University of Chicago to get my MBA. There weren't that many people that looked like me. And so there were many, many moments where I questioned if I belonged there. And I felt like that was such a waste of time. Um, And so I try to challenge myself now to understand, no, you belong here. You belong here, and you owe it to yourself to show up like you belong here and get what you need to get out of the room and give what you need to give to other people that are in this room. And you can't do that if you're constantly questioning if you even belong. So I would definitely tell myself, you belong there, do what you got to do, and get what you need to get out of the experience.
Hell yeah, Candace, you definitely belong there for sure. Don't worry about that. Um, really, I mean, thank you so much for everything today, Candace. Your insights have been so valuable, and we appreciate you stopping by. And I hope to have you back on again soon.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. It was a blast.
And that wraps up our conversation with Candace Barker. If you're looking for a digital agency's expertise for your upcoming project, look no further than designrush.com/marketplace. Here you'll find a curated list of agencies ready to elevate your project, whether it's digital marketing, web design, or something more niche. Don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to our channel for more engaging talks with industry trailblazers. Again, I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us for the next episode.